The reason for this is I'm trying to get a novel written. I've got 33. I should probably start over. It's 11:30 in the Inland Northwest. Um, for the archives, this is I'm using Novel Crafter to write a novel, which I'm cheating with AI because I just can't get enough words written to reach that 50,000 novel goal without it taking 10 years. And this shorts down the time on that. And so far it's gone pretty good. I've got 33,000 out of 50,000 words done. 50,000 words is the technical point at where a story becomes a novel. And mostly I'm just doing this as an experiment. See how well it works or it doesn't work. I do spend a lot of time wrestling with the AI, trying to get it to do what I want it to do instead of what it wants to do. But it is following the story that I'm laying out, and it would not be able to come up with this on its own. It might after I get it finished. But so we're at chapter 11, um, and we hit the change it to the AI model that I'm using, and then hit pull the trigger on it. See how it goes. And already I see an error that it's done. TRANSMISSIONIONS. Oof. So we discard that. Pull the trigger again. Dun, 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 dun. Actually, we should call this a day cabin. Uh, I of course have misspelled that. Discard. Try again. Uh, Still waiting it to finish writing, getting up to 600 words, 646 words. Sariel stood at the viewpoint in his day cabin aboard the expedition vessel, wings folded tightly against his back as he stared into the depths of the swan space. The stars were burning here burned differently than in Rolani territory. Hotter, more volatile somehow, or perhaps that was merely his perception, colored by the report he just received. 3 Paladin units, he said, his voice unusually calm as he turned from the viewport to face Lieutenant Neris. 3 units lost in a single week. Dramatic pause for a sip of coffee. Yes, Supreme Commander. Neris's wings twitched slightly, a sign of discomfort that Sarin noted immediately. All disappeared in deep space. No distress signals, no final transmissions, complete silence. Surreal's silver hair caught the cabin's soft lighting as he moved to his command console, fingers tracing patterns across the interface. The Paladin units were not merely drones. They represented the pinnacle of Rolani artificial intelligence, capable of writing their own logarithms to adapt to tactical situations. Each moved with unnatural grace, each represented an investment of resources that could have built a small starship. Show me their last known coordinates. A three-dimensional star map materialized between them. 3 blinking red points formed a rough triangle in the void between a swan
McCoy space. Pattern suggests deliberate action, Surreal observed his characteristics, calculating gleam and intensifying his characteristic calculating gleam intensifying in his eyes, not random failures. Our technical division has no explanation, sir. The units were functioning at optimal capacity during their last check-ins. Surreal's ceremonial markings seemed to shift subtly across his features as he considered the implications. Do you know what my grandmother told me when I was a child, Lieutenant? Norris looked startled by the personal turn. No, Lower High Commander. In her village, there were stories of entire settlements that vanished without warning. Surreal's voice took on a rhythmic quality as though reciting something ancient. Not abandoned, consumed. Homes with meals still warm on the tables, still warm on tables. Actually, I think that makes it flow better. Um, Homes with meals still warm on the tables, workshops with tools laid out as if their owners had merely stepped away briefly. He gestured to the map where the three blinking points pulsed like dying hearts. My grandmother spoke of the demon of insatiable hunger that descended upon such places, devouring not just the people, but their very essence, leaving behind only hollow shells. The lieutenant's wings drew closer to his body, an unconscious protective gesture. A folk tale, surely. Perhaps. Surreal's fingers traced the path between the lost drones, but consider our situation. Three advanced units, each capable of defending itself against known threats, each equipped with the most sophisticated communication arrays we possessed, all vanished without a trace. He turned his full attention to Norris. The lieutenant found himself taking an involuntary step backward. Something is out there, Lieutenant. Should we cue, what is that show? With Fox Mulder. uh, Something is out there, Lieutenant. Something that can neutralize our most advanced technology without triggering alarms or leaving evidence. Ceremonial markings across Surreal's features darkened slightly. Something hungry. What are your orders, sir? Surreal's eyes returned to the map, to the empty spaces between stars where his drones had disappeared. Double the encryption on all remaining Paladin units. Implement paired deployments. No drone operates alone. Not really going to help, actually, considering what I know about it. And prepare a full briefing for the he's already shifted into the end part of the section, and that's premature. I'm doing it one thing at a time. So, what we're going to do is um, cut it here. No. Um, no, we're going to cut it there. Ah. And the rest of that's mostly acceptable. At least everything's spelled correctly, which is more than I can say if I was writing it. Um, and we hit expand. Claude. Sonnet 3.7. Surreal stood at the viewport in his day cabin aboard the. So some of this is going to repeat what was already said, but it's also going to expand on other parts of it. Um, in his, Surreal stood at the viewport in his day cabin aboard the expedition vessel, wings folded tightly against his back as he stared into the depths of the swan space. And the stars here burned differently than Relani and in Relani territory, hotter and more volatile somehow. Their fierce lighting cast harsh shadows across the polished deck plates. Or perhaps that was merely his perception colored by the report he'd just received. The data was scrolling through his mind like a funeral dirge. 3 Paladin units, he said, his voice unnaturally calm as he turned from the viewport to face Lieutenant Norris. The silver-blue light from distant stars caught the edges of his ceremonial markings, making them appear to ripple across his face. 3 units lost in a single week. Yes, Supreme Commander. Norris's wings twitched slightly. a sign of discomfort that Sariel noted immediately, cataloging it alongside the lieutenant's elevated breathing and the way his hands clasped too tightly behind his back. All disappear in deep space. No, no distress signals, no final transmissions, complete silence. Monitoring stations register nothing unusual until the moment of disappearance, not even a power fluctuation. Cyril's silver hair caught the cabin's soft lighting as he moved to his command console, his long fingers tracing patterns across the interface with practiced precision. The holographic display responded instantly to his touch, illuminating his face below with an eerie blue glow. The Paladin units were not merely drones, they represented the pinnacle of Rolani artificial intelligence, capable of writing their own logarithms to adapt to tactical situations. Each moved with unnatural grace, each represented an investment of resources that could have built a small starship. Each contained technologies that the Rolani had shared with neither the Aswan nor the McCoy, because they haven't finished contacting them yet. Each contained technologies of the Rolani that the Rolani the advantage in the coming conflict. Show me the last known coordinates, Cyril commanded, his voice dropping to a near whisper that somehow filled the cabin more completely than a shout. A three-dimensional star map materialized between them, casting both officers in its ghostly light. Three blinking red points formed a rough triangle. In the void between Aswan and McCoy space, pulsing like a waning beacons in an otherwise serene field of stars and planetary systems. Serene, let's delete that. Serene stars and planetary bodies. BODIES. Pattern suggests deliberate action, Sariel observed, his characteristic calculating gleam intensifying in his eyes as he circled the projection. His wings shifted slightly, adjusting to maintain perfect balance as he moved. Not random failures. The statistical improbability of three catastrophic malfunctions such proximity is significant. Our technical division has no explanation, sir. The units were functioning at optimal capacity during their last check-ins. Their diagnostic reports. I'm going to take a break here and turn on the air conditioner. Coffee's making me warm. Who would have thought a warm drink would make one warm? Crazy talk. Let's see. Our technical division has no explanation, sir. The units were functioning at optimal capacity during the last check-ins. Their diagnostic report showed all systems operating within normal parameters, and their mission trajectories gave them no reason to deviate into potentially hazardous regions. Norris swallowed hard, his throat clicking audibly in the quiet cabin. We've analyzed the telemetry data a dozen times. There's simply nothing to indicate what might have happened. Surreal ceremony markings seemed to shift subtly across his features as he considered the implications. The silver lines darkened momentarily as though responding to some internal calculation. He stepped away from the console, moving to a wall panel that concealed a small collection of ancient artifacts, relics from his family's ancestral holdings on the Rolani homeworld. That the AI considers the word homeworld to be misspelled. That's kind of funny. Do you know what my grandmother told me when I was a child, Lieutenant? He asked, running one finger along the edge of a curved stone tablet. Norris looked startled at the personal turn, his posture stiffening further. No, Lord High Commander. In our village, there were stories of entire settlements that vanished without warning. Cyril's voice took on a rhythmic quality as though reciting something ancient, something passed down through generations of Rolani before the stars were ever within their reach. Not abandoned, consumed. Homes with meals still warm on the tables. Workshops with tools laid out as if their owners had merely stepped away briefly. Children's toys dropped mid-play. Livestock still penned and fed. He gestured to them. He gestured to the map where three blinking points pulsed like dying hearts, their rhythm somehow unsettling in its persistence. My grandmother spoke of a daemon of insatiable hunger that descended upon such places, devouring not just the people but their very essence, leaving behind only hollow shells. The stories described how it would circle its prey, testing defenses, learning patterns before it struck. His eyes narrowed as he studied the triangular formation. 3 points of contact, a classic predatory assessment pattern. The lieutenant's wings drew closer to his body, an unconscious protective gesture that made him appear smaller in the spacious cabin. Beads of moisture had formed along his ceremonial markings, another involuntary response to stress. A folk tale, surely. A primitive explanation for natural disasters or perhaps rival clan warfare in our pre-unification era. Perhaps. Sorrow's fingers, figures? Fingers traced the path between the lost drones, leaving faint disturbances in the holographic display that lingered like ghostly trails. But consider our situation. 3 advanced units, each capable of defending itself against known threats, each equipped with the most sophisticated communication arrays we possess, each piloted by an artificial intelligence that can anticipate and counter virtually any conventional attack. All vanished without a trace. No debris fields, no radiation signatures, no final transmissions warning of impending danger. He turned his full attention to Naris, and the lieutenant found himself taking an involuntary step backward, his wings bumping against the bulkhead behind him. Suriel's eyes had that characteristic Rolani gleam, a look of perpetual calculation and barely concealed appetite that now seemed focused entirely on the problem before them. Something is out there, Lieutenant. Something that can neutralize our most advanced technology without triggering alarms or leaving evidence. The ceremonial markings across Suriel's features darkened slightly, the silver lines taking on an almost metallic sheen. Something hungry, something that hunts with intelligence and purpose, something that may be studying us even as we study these disappearances. What are your orders, sir? Naris asked, his voice barely audible over the soft hum of the ship's environmental systems. Suriel's eyes returned to the map, to the empty spaces between stars where his drones had disappeared. His wings unfurled slightly, stretching to their full impressive span before folding back into perfect alignment against his spine. A gesture of resolution among the lines, signaling a decision had made and a course determined. That last paragraph I don't want, because I'm going to have them change scene. So, continue. Uh, uh, S-A-R-E-L, surreal. Um, is his day cabin to a conference conference room full of high ranking. Can't even spell. High ranking officers. He enters fashionably late. enters fashionably late. That is terrible spelling. Fashion. Ugh. He enters late. Control copy. Control paste. Mm-hmm. I think this will. I can always delete the section and put in more context, I guess. Um, when it's continued the story, I think it grabs the context of the previous section. Of course, that's all three at this point. I'm still new to this. What does this do? No. Oh, I see. I can close. Gives you more control over the prompt, I guess. Uh, 637 words. Cyril strode through the polished corridors of the expedition vessel, his mind still cycling through the implications of the lost Paladin units. The ship's ambient lighting. Oh, that was weird. Ambient lighting dimmed respectfully as his passed, sensors recognizing his rank and adjusting to his preferences without conscious command. Okay. The implications of that's a bit disturbing considering what's going to happen to them. Two junior officers flattened themselves against the bulkhead as he approached, their wings tucking tight behind their backs in defense. Barely noticed them. Sounds like a Supreme Commander. The doors to Conference Chamber Alpha slid open in his approach, reading a scene of barely contained chaos. 12 high-ranking Rolani officers had arranged themselves around the oval table. Their ceremonial couches? I think I want that to be chairs. Ceremonial chairs positioned to indicate fractional alignments rather than strict military hierarchy. Wings flared and folded in agitation as voices rose and fell in distinct cadence of formal Rilani debate protocol. The conversation halted abruptly as Sauriel entered, all eyes turned toward him in a momentary silence falling across the chamber before Admiral Calith broke protocol to speak first. Supreme Commander, we've been discussing the Aswan proposition for nearly 2 hours without resolution. Calith's wings trembled slightly with the strain of maintaining formal posture. The Strategic Assessment Division believes we must act immediately while intelligence operations recommends further surveillance. Sauriel moved to his position at the head of the table, noting the scattered data tablets and half-empty refreshment containers. I got one of those. That testified to the length and intensity of the debate. He settled into his command throne? Let's call it a throne. Throne. Wings arranging themselves in precise configuration that denoted authority without aggression. Continue, he said simply, his silver hair catching the light as he inclined his head toward Admiral Calith. The timing is precarious, Fleet Commander Eris injected. Her ceremony markings particularly prominent against her pale features. The Aswan-Merkoi conflict provides us with an unprecedented opportunity. Both species are distracted, their resources committed elsewhere. If we delay, that advantage dissipates. Opportunity for what? General Terrace Terris countered, his wings spread slightly in challenge. To alienate potential allies, the Aswan may reject our terms outright if they perceive them as exploitative. They're engaged in conflict, yes, but not desperate. Not yet, Eris returned, her voice dropping to a near whisper that nonetheless carried throughout the chamber. But our intelligence suggests their conflict with the Morkoi is escalating faster than either side anticipated. Resource depletion is becoming critical. Intelligence Director Nerith shifted in his chair. His ceremonial markings darkening with disapproval. Our intelligence is incomplete at best. The Aswan communication system remains partially impenetrable to our analysis algorithms, and their decision-making processes allow cultural imperatives we've yet to fully map. Follow cultural imperatives we've yet to fully map. Decision-making process follow cultural imperatives we've yet to fully map. Which is precisely why we should gather more data before proceeding, Admiral. No! That is McCoy. Or not McCoy, that's a swan name. Got a chat. Rolani. Name that sounds angelic. No. Too angelic. I like Leora. Leora it is. Control copy. Now I gotta find out where that was. It was Voss. Where the hell's Voss? Admiral Leora added, her wings folding into a position that indicated thoughtful caution. The terms we're proposing, access to the inertial drive technology in exchange, that is not the bargain. EFFICTIV, effective. VERY. Or ACCE. To warp points and GIL AXY galaxy at large. I think this is the unexpanded version, I think. Isn't it? Ugh. Her wings falling into position. They indicate thoughtful caution. The terms we're proposing. The changes I make here get folded into the expansion. Fairness is irrelevant, Commander Jarrus countered, his markings flaring briefly with intensity. What matters is necessity. The Swan need our gravitic systems to maintain their advantage over the McCoy. Need our military might. TAR, military, MIGHT. military might to maintain their advantage over the Mercoi. Their drive technology would accelerate. Their fleet units UNITS. Fleet units would accelerate our expansion plans by decades. Sariel observed the factions forming across the table, those advocating immediate action clustered to his right, those canceling patience to his left. Ceremonial markings across his features remained neutral, betraying none of the internal calculations he absorbed upon completing arguments. Both perspectives have merit, he finally said, his voice cutting through the renewed debate like a blade, but neither addresses the fundamental question. What do the Aswan truly desire beyond this immediate conflict, and what do they fear? He gestured to the holographic display at the center of the table where the Aswan and Mercoi territories glowed in contrasting colors, the borders sharp and defined where they met in contested regions. Understanding their hunger is the key to satisfying or exploiting it. Okay. I do believe that's the 600-word version. Yeah. Expand. Claude 3.7. And it should incorporate those minor changes that I made. Might even improve my language. Sariel strode through the polished corridors of the expedition vessel, his mind still slacking back where we started, cycling through the implications of the lost Paladin units. The ship's ambient light dimmed respectfully as he passed, sensors recognizing his rank and adjusting to his preferences without conscious command. Two junior officers flattened themselves against the bulkhead as they approached, their wings tucking tight against their backs in deference, their eyes averted from his silver-haired form as if looking directly at him might invite unwanted attention. He barely noticed them. His thoughts consumed by the vanished drones and what their disappearance might mean for the Relani expansion plans in this sector. The doors to Conference Chamber Alpha slid open at his approach, revealing a scene of barely contained chaos. 12 high-ranking Relani officers had arranged themselves around the oval table, their ceremonial chairs positioned to indicate factional alignments rather than strict military hierarchy. Wings flared and folded in agitation as voices rose and fell in distinct cadence of formal Relani debate protocol. The air itself seemed charged with tension, the subtle scent of pheromone stress indicators detectable even to Sariel's disciplined senses. The conversation halted abruptly as Sariel entered. All eyes turned toward him, a momentary silence falling across the chamber before Amal Kelleith broke protocol to speak first, his ceremonial markings pulsing with barely suppressed urgency. Supreme Commander, we've been discussing the Aswan proposition for nearly 2 hours without resolution. Kelleith's wings trembled slightly with the strain of maintaining formal posture, the primary feathers rustling against each other like dry leaves. The Strategic Assessment Division believes we must act immediately while the Intelligence Operations recommends further surveillance. The division goes more pronounced by the minute. Sariel moved to his position at the head of the table, noting the scattered data tablets and half-empty refreshment containers that testified to the length and intensity of the debate. Condensation rings marked the polished surface where drinks had been placed and forgotten in the heat of argument. He settled into his command throne, wings arranging themselves in precise configuration that denoted authority without aggression, the silver lines of the ceremonial markings catching the subdued lighting. Continue, he said simply, his silver hair catching the light as he inclined his head toward Admiral Kelleith. Not really sure how to pronounce that one. I think the syllable is K-E-L and then I-T-H. The single word carried the weight of command that silenced even the whispered side conversations around the table. The timing is precarious, Fleet Commander Eris interjected, her ceremonial markings particularly prominent against her pale features, their pattern indicating she had undergone inspiration transformation during her last dimensional rotation cycle. Ooh. The Aswan-Merkoi conflict provides us with an unprecedented opportunity. Both species are distracted, their resources committed elsewhere. If we delay, that advantage dissipates like morning mist. Merkoi philosophical debates have already shifted toward military mobilization theories, and the Aswan God King has authorized expanded production of their exoskeletal battle armor. Opportunity for what? General Taris countered, his wings spreading slightly in challenge, the motion sending a ripple of tension through the assembled officers. To alienate potential allies, the Aswan may reject our terms outright if they perceive them as exploitive. They've engaged in conflict, yes, but not desperate. Their imperial diplomatic corps remains fully functional, and their hereditary kings maintain control over their respective territories. Hmm. Not yet, Eris returned, her voice dropping to a near whisper that nonetheless carried through the chamber, the acoustics designed to amplify even the softest strategic utterance. But our intelligence suggests their conflict with the Merkoi is escalating faster than either side anticipated. Resource depletion is becoming critical. Their centaur physiology demands specific mineral supplements that are becoming scarce in the contested border worlds. Colonies. COLONIES. Intelligence Director Neris shifted on his chair, his ceremonial markings darkening with disapproval, the patterns temporarily resembling those of an anglicized Rolani despite his known null-effect status. Our intelligence is incomplete at best. The Aswan communication systems remain partially impenetrable to our analysis. All algorithms and their decision-making processes follow cultural imperatives we've yet to fully map. Their exoskeletal structures mask many of the biological indicators we typically rely upon for threat assessment, which is precisely why we should gather more data before proceeding, Admiral Leora added, her wings folded into a position that indicated thoughtful caution, the primary flight feathers interlocking in a pattern taught at the highest levels of diplomatic training. In terms we're proposing, effective slavery for the access to work points across the galaxy at large may not be perceived as equitable by their cultural standards. The Aswan imperial theocracy places enormous value on tradition and formality. Our proposition violates several of their known cultural taboos regarding resource allocation. Fairness is irrelevant, Commander Jarrus countered, his markings flaring brief with intensity as he leaned forward, his wings creating a subtle display of dominance that caused several junior officers to shift uncomfortably in their seats. What matters is necessity. The Aswan need our military might to maintain their advantage over the Merkoi. Their fleet units would accelerate our expansion plans by decades. Their hard exoskeletons make them ideal shock troops for contested landings, and their four-hoof mobility gives them advantages in certain terrains. Surreal observed the factions forming across the table, those advocating immediate action clustered to his right, those counseling patience to his left. The ceremonial markings across his features remained neutral, betraying none of his internal calculations as he absorbed the competing arguments. His eyes, however, had the characteristic gleam of hunger that defined their species, a calculating assessment on how best satisfy the endless Rolani appetite for expansion. Both perspectives have merit, he said finally, his voice cutting through the renewed debate like a blade through ceremonial fabric. But neither addresses the fundamental question: what do the Aswan truly desire beyond the immediate conflict, and what do they fear? What drives their God King's decisions beyond the obvious theological justifications presented to their populace? Would a God King allow competing kings? I would say no. Um, um, Remains fully functional. Gives them advantages in certain terrains. Surreal observed the factions forming across the table. Those advocating immediate action clustered to his right, those canceling patience to his left. The ceremonial marks across his features remained neutral, betraying none of the internal calculations. He absorbed competing arguments. Yeah, I read that paragraph. Both perspectives have merit, he finally said, his voice cutting through the renewed debate like a blade through a ceremonial fabric. But neither addresses the fundamental question. What do the Aswan truly desire? Yeah, right. I read that one too. He gestured toward the holographic display at the center of the table, where the Aswan and Merkoi territories gleamed in contrasting colors, their borders sharp and defined where they met in congested regions. His long fingers traced a pattern through the display that highlighted resource-rich system. BODIES. Currently under highlighted resource-rich system bodies currently under dispute. The holographic light playing across his silver markings in hypnotic patterns. Understanding their hunger is the key to satisfying it or exploiting it. The Aswan may present themselves as driven by a divine mandate and imperial tradition, but beneath those justifications lies an appetite not unlike our own. We must identify what truly satiates them before we can properly negotiate terms that serve our expansion. Did I drop that one by accident? Nope. Okay. That was included in the prompt. Awesome. Stop that. That's really annoying. Discussion turns form request for additional information. Actually, yeah. It'll try to close it out like it's finishing the scene, but I think I can delete and rewrite to change that. And pull the trigger. Dun 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 dun. And this is so boring that nobody's talking to me. Because nobody respects AI-driven writing. And wow, 700 words. Which brings us to the formal request from the S1 Diplomatic Corps. Intelligence Director Nerith said, activating a new holographic display that superimposed itself over the territorial map. The formal document appeared ornate with the distinctive seal of the God King's office, a stylized representation of their centaur-like form beneath the corona of divine light. Sounds appropriate. Surreal studied the document, knowing the precise formal language typical of the Swan diplomatic communications. The request for information about the triracial compact was crafted with characteristic politeness that barely concealed their underlying hunger for knowledge. They're more desperate than they appear, he observed, the ceremonial markings across his features shifting subtly as he processed the implications. This request, actually, discard.
IDIOT. The EXT existence. The try RACIAL racial compact SLIP. Yeah, there comes a time when you reach the bottom of the cup and the coffee is empty. It's very depressing. Very sad, sad moment. Looks like I'm going to have to take an enforced break here pretty soon. Ah! Admiral Kuli's wings folded tightly against his back as he slid a data crystal across the polished table surface. The Swan formal request arrived 3 standard cycles ago through diplomatic channels. God King's representatives are waiting our response regarding the triracial compact structure, capabilities, and intentions. Surreal's eyes narrowed imperceptibly as the words hung in the air. The ceremonial markings darkened slightly, only a visible sign of his displeasure. What idiot, he said, his voice dangerously soft, revealed the existence of the compact to the Swan in the first place. An uncomfortable silence fell across the chamber. Officers exchanged glances, wings shifted in subtle displays of unease. Finally, Intelligence Director Nereth cleared his throat. It appears to have been an unintentional disclosure during initial contact protocols. A junior diplomatic Ashate mentioned our partners when discussing resource allocation parameters. Nereth's wings twitched with barely suppressed irritation. The damage was compounded when the Aswan intercepted the automated telemetry from one of our survey vessels that contained embedded Narmara atmospheric preference data. Surreal's fingers typed a precise rhythm on the table as he absorbed this information. The ceremonial markings across his features seemed to pulse with each tap like a visual metronome, marking the cost of such carelessness. Options, he commanded, the single word carrying the weight of authority, that straightened spines around the table. Intelligence Officer Mela rose from her seat, her wings arranged in formal presentation posture. We've prepared 3 potential response strategies, Supreme Commander. Her hands moved through the holographic display, bringing up detailed analysis matrices coded in the Rolani tactical symbology. First, we provide sanitized information, carefully curated facts about the compact that reveals our cooperative structure without disclosing our true capabilities or the unique attributes of our Sidrani and Namara partners. The display shifted to show draft documents with strategic redactions highlighted in pulsing red. Second, we use this exchange as an intelligence gathering opportunity. We deliberately include certain information that will prompt specific questions from the Aswan, allowing us to assess their technological understanding and cultural priorities based on which elements they focus on. The hologram transformed again, showing a complex web of informational pathways with decision nodes at key junctures. Third, we strategically withhold critical information, creating knowledge gaps that can only be filled through direct negotiation, thereby establishing leverage for future diplomatic engagements. The final display showed a chess-like board with pieces representing information packets arranged in strategic formations. Surreal studied each option with characteristic Rolani gleam in his eyes. The look of perpetual calculation barely concealed appetite that becomes synonymous with their species' relentless expansion. His wings shifted slightly as he considered the implications, the primary flight feathers adjusting their
it with subtle precision. The Aswan imperial theocracy places supreme value on formal protocols and information hierarchies, he observed, his voice carrying easily through the chamber despite its measured tone. Their god king maintains power through careful control of knowledge. They will recognize the sanitized response immediately. Okay, it looks like I'm going to have to take a break. It starts in 30 seconds anyways. So, um, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to turn on the music. I should add a break sign. Let's see. Text. Okay. I'm not getting the static I was getting. Application capture. Properties. Okay. No. Ah, this is irritating. I can hear it in my earphones, but the audio mixer's not picking it up. Delete. Yes. Audio output capture. Maybe that's what I'm looking for. Well, that looks for devices. That must be what it was. Wasn't focused on the media player. There we go. Restart. How do I restart? There we go. Now you guys have music, so it's not me talking to myself. Although now you guys have music, so it's not me talking to myself. So, yeah, the mute wasn't muted. The mic was not muted because I turned the headphones off and on because it was getting static. Let's see. This is the 700 word version. They will recognize the sanitized response immediately. Probably true. He rose from his seat, moving a circle to the holographic display of predatory grace. The silver in his hair cut the light as new, creating momentary flashes that drew all eyes to his tall form. Similarly, they will anticipate our attempt to gather intelligence through this exchange. Their diplomatic corps will rigid in tradition is sophisticated and counterintelligence methodology. The ceremony markings darkened slightly as he paused, considering the third option. The withholding strategy, however, his eyes narrowed. That gleam intensified his calculated potential outcomes. The Aswan understand power derived from controlled access to information. It speaks their language of hierarchical knowledge distribution. The Aswan understand power derived from controlled access. Yeah. It speaks their language of hierarchical knowledge distribution. Admiral Leor's wings shifted in a pattern indicating respectful disagreement. Supreme Commander, deliberate withholding risks being perceived as hostile. This one McCoy conflict presents an opportunity for alliance, not antagonism. Not hostile, Surreal corrected, his markings shifting subtly. Authoritative. There is a distinction the Aswan will recognize immediately. He turned to face the assembled officers, decision crystallizing. Implement a hybrid approach. Provide enough information to demonstrate our legitimacy while creating strategic knowledge gaps that position as the gatekeepers of valuable intelligence. His eyes swept the room, calculating gleam now focused with laser precision. The compact's hunger must be satisfied, but on our terms. The Swan will join our expansion, not as equals, but as assets. Their God King will understand the language of power we speak, if the words themselves remain partially obscured. Okay, that's mostly acceptable. Now we expand it, because I want to inflate the word count to get this up to 50,000 words. Because otherwise I don't have a novel. It's wild and free. 700, 800, 900, 1,000, 1,100, 1,200. Oh, got a Discord alert. Admiral Kelly's wings folded tightly across his back as he slid a data crystal across the polished table surface. Crystalline structure catching the ambient light, reflecting it in a pattern that momentarily distracted the junior officers present. Apparently they're like cats and don't look at anything shiny. This one formal request arrived 3 standard cycles ago through diplomatic channels. Their God King's representatives are awaiting our response regarding the triracial compact structure, capabilities, and intentions. They've emphasized the urgency of their inquiry with unusual directness for their typical ceremonial communication style. Surreal's eyes nodded imperceptibly as the words hung in the air, the tension in the chamber thickening like atmospheric pressure before a storm. Ceremonial markings darkened slightly, the only visible sign of his displeasure. Though those who knew him well recognized it as the equivalent to another species' explosive outburst. What idiot? What idiot? What idiot? He said, his voice dangerously soft. Each symbol, precisely measured and weighed with implied threat, revealed the existence of the compact to the Aswan in the first place. That is an excellent question. An uncomfortable silence fell across the chamber, broken only by the subtle hum of environmental systems maintaining the Terran-like conditions preferred by the Rolani delegation. Officers exchanged glances, wings shifting in subtle displays of unease, the delicate primary feathers rustling with barely contained anxiety. Several junior officers seemed to physically shrink in their seats, their posture unconsciously defensive as if attempting to avoid becoming the target of Sariel's displeasure. Finally, Intelligence Director Nareth cleared his throat, his wings arranged in a formal pattern denoting both respect and acceptance of responsibility. It appears to have been an unintentional disclosure during initial contact protocols. Junior diplomatic attaché mentioned our partners when discussing resource allocation parameters. Nareth's wings twitched with barely suppressed irritation, the moment betraying his own anger at the subordinate's carelessness. The damage was compounded when the Aswani attempted automated telemetry from one of our survey vessels that contained embedded Narmada atmospheric defense preference data, specifically the Venus-like heat requirements for their environmental cores that contrasted sharply with our own needs. Cyril's long, elegant fingers tapped a precise rhythm on the table as he absorbed this information, each tap sending tiny vibrations across the polished surface, the ceremonial markings across. His features seemed to pulse with each tap like a visual metronome, marking the cost of such carelessness. The silver in his hair caught the light from above, creating an almost halo-like effect that contrasted with the predatory intensity of his gaze. Options, he commanded, a single word carrying the right weight of authority that straightened spines across the table and caused an immediate shift in the room's energy. No one denied the Supreme Commander's expectation of immediate, thorough responses. Intelligence Officer Mela rose from her seat with fluid grace. Oh, Leora's gone. Wings arranged in formal presentation posture, the elaborate pattern indicating both deference and professional confidence. Her uniform bore the subtle indicators of someone who had completed at least 2-dimensional rotational cycles, though, as with all Rolani, her exact age remained a closely guarded personal matter. We've prepared 3 potential response strategies, Supreme Commander. Her hands moving through the holographic display with practiced precision, bringing up detailed analysis matrices coded in Rolani tactical symbology, complex 3-dimensional patterns that conveyed layers of meaning invisible to non-Rolani observers. First, we provide sanitized information, carefully curated facts about the compact that reveal our cooperative structure without disclosing our true capabilities or the unique attributes of our Sidrani and Namara partners, particularly the Sidrani consciousness mapping initiative and the adaptive integration strategies in NOM. The display shifted to show draft documents with strategic redactions highlighted in pulsing red, certain sections pulsing more intensely than others to indicate priority classification level. Second, we use this exchange as an intelligence gathering opportunity. We deliberately include certain information that will prompt specific questions from the Aswan, allowing us to assess their technological understanding and cultural priorities based on such elements they focus on. The hologram transported again, showing a complex web of information and pathways. Decision nodes at key junctions, each branch representing potential Aswan responses and corresponding counter strategies. How long have I been broadcasting? An hour. Wow. Third, we strategically withhold critical information, creating knowledge gaps that can only be filled through direct negotiation, thereby establishing leverage for future diplomatic engagements with the imperial theocracy. The final display showed a chest-like board with pieces representing information packets arranged in strategic formation, some pieces glowing more brightly than others to indicate their value as bargaining assets. Cyril studied each option with that characteristic Rolani gleam in his eyes, the look of perpetual calculation and barely concealed appetite that becomes synonymous with our species' relentless expansion across the resource-rich territories. His wings shifted, shifted slightly as he considered the implications, the primary flight feathers adjusting their alignment with subtle precision that betrayed his heightened focus. The Swan imperial theocracy places supreme value on formal protocols and information hierarchies, he observed, his voice carrying easily through the chamber despite its measured tone. The God King maintains power through the careful control of knowledge, dispensing it to his subordinates like precious water in the desert. He will recognize a sanitized response immediately and interpret as either weakness or deliberate disrespect. He rose from his seat with predatory elegance, moving to circle the holographic display with measured steps, his tall form commanding attention without obvious effort. The silver in his hair caught the light as he moved, creating momentary flashes that drew all eyes to his imposing 9-foot height, and the subtle patterns of the ceremonial markings that denoted his diplomatic status. Similarly, you can pronounce it by shirt. They will anticipate our attempt to gather intelligence through this exchange. The diplomatic court, while rigid in tradition, is sophisticated in counterintelligence methodology. The God King's representatives are selected for the ability to reveal nothing while appearing forthcoming. The ceremonial markings darkened slightly as he paused, considering the third option with intense concentration. The withholding strategy, however, his eyes narrowed, that gleam intensifying his calculated potential outcomes, weighing variables with precision of a master strategist. Yaswan understand power derived from controlled access to information. It speaks their language of hierarchical knowledge distribution. Their entire society structure revolves around those who knows what and when they are permitted to know it. Oh, Leora is there after all. Admiral Leora's wings shifted in a pattern of indicating respectful disagreement, emotion subtle but unmistakable to the other Relani present. Supreme Commander, deliberate withholding risks being perceived as hostile in context of their ongoing conflict with the McCoy. The Swan-McCoy conflict presents an opportunity for alliance, not antagonism. We could position ourselves as valuable mediators. Not hostile, Surreal corrected, his markings shifting subtly in a pattern that veterans recognized as his expression of strategic certainty. Authoritative. There is a distinction the Aswan will recognize immediately, giving their reverence for hierarchical power structures. He turned to face the assembled officers, insisting krill stylizing with the clarity of a perfected formed strategy. We will implement a hybrid approach, provide enough information to demonstrate our legitimacy while creating strategic knowledge gaps that position us as the gatekeepers of valuable intelligence. His eyes swept the room, calculating gleam, now focused with laser precision, assessing each officer's reaction and cataloging their response for future reference. The compact's hunger must be satisfied, but on our terms. The Aswan will join our expansion, not as equals, but as assets to be utilized for resource acquisition. Our God King understands the language of power we speak, even if the words themselves remain partially obscured. He has maintained his position through similar methodologies for centuries. And now we go to the final paragraph. Well, yeah, the final item before you hit the closing, where he sums up all the decisions he's made, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I'll include the closing. I think I've got this in play as enough. I hit the wrong button. Control V. Continue the story. Kind of Velvet Surreal sums up. I don't know decisions. And pull the trigger. Dun, dun, na, 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 na. Na, 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 na. Yep, silence is loud. Writing really gets rid of people going into your forum to talk. Probably because I'm so laser focused on what I'm doing. The doors to the conference chamber Alpha parted again, drawing all eyes as junior communications officer entered. Her wings were tucked tightly against her back in the posture of one bearing unwelcome news, and she approached Sariel with the careful movement to summon approaching a predator. Apparently they shoot the messenger in this civilization. Supreme Commander, she said, her voice pitched low but clear. Forgive the interruption. We've received another transmission from the Namara Collective. A ripple of tension spread through the room. Admiral Kelly's wings stiffened, and several officers exchanged meaningful glances. The 9th this month, Surreal observed, his voice neutral through his ceremony, though his ceremonial markings darkened slightly. The hunger grows more pronounced. The communications officer nodded, her own markings paling with stress. Yeah, okay. Let's see. The hunger grows more pronounced. The communications officer nodded, her markings paling with stress. They're demanding a comprehensive update on our SWAN engagement strategy. The transmission pattern suggests multiple spokespersons are involved in its composition. The collective appears unsettled. Sariel's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. The Namara's shifting spokespersons made their communications particularly challenging to interpret. Each representative bringing a different perspective to their collective demands, sometimes within the same transmission. Show me, he commanded. The officer activated her data tablet, and a holographic representation of the message appeared on the conference table. Not text or audio, but a complex... No text or audio, but a complex pattern of light pulses and sonic frequencies visualized as overlapping waveforms. The Namara's preferred communication method. Intelligence Director Narth studied the pattern with obvious concern. Subsonic frequencies are particularly intense. This indicates significant and collective agitation. They grow impatient with our methodical approach, Admiral Lyara observed, her wings shifting in a pattern of caution. The Namara hunger for immediate results threatens our operational timeline. Commander Jarrus leaned forward, his ceremonial markings flaring. We cannot allow their appetite to dictate our strategic deployment. The Namara understand resource acquisition, but lack the Roloni appreciation for proper positioning. Their hunger is immediate, ours is eternal. Yet we must satisfy them sufficiently to maintain the compact, Fleet Commander Eris countered. Their Venus-like environmental requirements make them ideal partners for engaging with the Aswan. We need their specialized adaptive integration capabilities. Surreal circled the table slowly, his silver hair touching the light as he moved. The Namara collective serves its purpose within the compact, but their hunger lacks patience. They would consume the Aswan opportunity without proper preparation. leaving nothing but stripped resources and missed strategic advantage. He paused, studying the visualization of the Namara message. That characteristic Rulani gleam intensified his eyes, the look of calculation and controlled appetite that defined their species. "We will accelerate Paladin drone protection immediately," he announced, his decision crystallizing with unmistakable authority. "Triple the output from our manufacturing facilities within the Gaijins." No, that would be from the home system.
I saved up all my dreams and wishes true, just to be where you in the window view.
The mysterious losses must be offset before they compromise our surveillance capabilities. His long fingers trace a pattern through the holographic display, highlighting key resource-rich regions and disputed territory. Our terms with the Aswan will be clear: military alliance against the Mercuri in exchange for privileged access to their mineral-rich colonies. The terms will appear generous initially, with the true cost revealed only after we've committed resources to joint operations. The officers nod in agreement, wings shift in patterns of approval. So, yes, wings? Yes, wingman? The information package regarding the compact won't emphasize our technological superiority while obscuring the true nature of our partnership structure. This one must see through recognizing our value without understanding our internal dynamics. Surreal ceremonial markings darkened with determination. As for the Namara, prepare a response that acknowledges their concerns while emphasizing the delicate nature of these negotiations, including enough technical details about our drone deployment to satisfy their immediate hunger for progress without revealing our true strategic timeline. He moved to the central holographic display where the Aswan and Mercuri territories glowed in contrasting colors, their contested borders sharp and defined. The gesture extended the view to show the surrounding sectors where a compact influence had already begun to spread like subtle infection. The sector has a particular definition in my world. The surrounding spaces? Yeah. The Aswan-Mercuri conflict is merely one piece in our larger design, said his voice carrying away with certainty that made him Supreme Commander. There's resources, there are technologies, there are very conflicts. All will serve to satisfy the compact's appetite for expansion. Not today, perhaps, but inevitably. The gleam in his eyes intensified as he studied the display, his wings arranged in a formal pattern that signified absolute commitment to a chosen course. Their hunger is specific, ours is universal. In the end, all hunger serves the compact. And now we expand in my quest for inflated word counts. I can always shorten. Expand. Claude. Doors to the conference chamber, Alpha Part again, drawing all eyes as the junior communications officer entered. Her wings were tucked tightly against her back, and Pasha one bearing unwelcome news. She approached Sariel with the careful movements of someone approaching a predator. The subtle vibration of her primary feathers betrayed her anxiety, a detail not lost on the veteran officers present. "Supreme Commander," she said, her voice pitched low but clear, the formal tonal pattern of her speech indicating proper deference. "Forgive the interruption. We received another transmission from the Namara Collective. Their priority indicators exceed standard protocols." A visual ripple of tension spread through the room. Admiral Calith's wings stiffened with an audible rustling of feathers, and several officers exchanged meaningful glances, their ceremonial markings shifting through subtle hues of concern. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "The ninth this month," Sariel observed, his voice neutral, though his ceremonial markings darkened slightly, the intricate patterns along his cheekbones intensifying to a deep indigo. "Our hunger grows more pronounced. One might almost call it ravenous." The communications officer nodded, his own markings paling with stress, an almost translucent blue. "They're demanding a comprehensive update to our Swan engagement strategy. The transmission pattern suggests multiple spokespersons were involved in its composition. At least 7 distinct harmonic signatures. The collective appears unsettled. There were frequent bursts I've never encountered in previous communications." Cyril's eyes closed, almost imperceptibly, the silver flecks in his irises catching the light. The Lamara's shifting spokespersons made their communications particularly challenging to interpret, each representative bringing a different perspective to their collective demands, sometimes within the same transmission, creating overlapping waves of meaning that could be interpreted in multiple ways. "Show me," he commanded, extending a hand with fingers splayed in the formal gesture requisiting data transfer. The officer activated her data tablet with a practiced flick of her wrist, and a holographic representation of the message appeared above the conference table. Not text or audio, but a complex pattern of light pulses and sonic frequencies, visualized as overlapping waveforms, the Namara's preferred communication method. 3-dimensional projections posed with an unsettling rhythm, casting eerie shadows across the assembled officers' faces. Intelligence Director Nurath studied the pattern with obvious concern, his primary wing joints tensing as he leaned forward. The subsonic frequencies are particularly intense. Note this cluster in the 22 to 28 Hz range. This indicates significant collective agitation, possibly even discord among the group members who have never seen this particular harmonic structure before. "I grow impatient with our methodical approach," Admiral Leora observed, her wings shifting in a pattern of caution, the secondary feathers fanning outward in traditional display of strategic awareness. "The Namara hunger for immediate results threatens our operational timeline. These poses here," she gestured at a rapidly oscillating section of the hologram, "suggest they're considering independent action." Commander Jarnus leaned forward, his ceremonial markings flaring bright crimson along his temples. "We cannot allow their appetite to dictate our strategic deployment. The Namara understand resource acquisition but lack the Rolani appreciation for proper positioning. Their hunger is immediate, ours is eternal. They would have us strip mine opportunities rather than cultivating lasting advantage. Yet we must satisfy them sufficiently to maintain the compact," Fleet Commander Eris countered, his wings arranging themselves in the formal pattern indicating diplomatic caution. "Their Venus-like environmental requirements make them ideal partners for engaging with the Aswan. We need their specialized adaptive integration capabilities, particularly the thermal-resistant technologies. The God King's palace alone would be inaccessible to us without environmental modifications." Sariel circled the table slowly, his silver hair catching the light as he moved, creating a halo effect that emphasized his authoritative presence. "Nice touch." Each deliberate step was measured, his wings held in formal position of contemplative authority. The assembled officers tracked his movements with respectful attention. "The Namara collective serves its purpose within the compact, but their hunger lacks patience." Actually, I think I'm going to discard this entire section. Because I want to put in a conclusion. Surreal decide. Now is the time to offer the fingers bargain bargain to the Aswan. Before the NAR can act on OWN.
How much is the saber-toothed kitty? The one with the 6-inch fangs. Is it wild? Is it pretty? Can it hang? Can it hang? I see it in the window glowing with eyes that pierce the night.
Sometimes you just scrap everything you've done to make it better.
Friendly, not a fright. How much is a kitty? In the window, saber-toothed and fierce. 6-inch fangs grow. Look into its eyes. Mystery divine. Japanese delight. Wish that it was mine. How much is that kitty in the window now? 6-inch fangs so pretty. Makes my heart say wow. Sharp teeth like no other. Eyes that pierce my soul. Every time I want
Communications officer at the periphery of the conference room shifted uncomfortably, wings tucked tight against his back as he approached Suriel with unmistakable posture. Boy, my voice is starting to feel the strain. Let me go get something to drink. Terminator. Supreme Commander, forgive the interruption. His voice dropped to a near whisper as he extended a data tablet. The Namara Collective has transmitted another inquiry regarding operational progress. This marks their 9th formal request for updates this month. A palpable tension swept through the chamber. Several officers' wings stiffened involuntarily while others exchanged glances laden with unspoken concern. The mention of their starfish-like allies cast an immediate shadow over the proceedings like a cloud passing before a sun. Suriel's ceremonial markings darkened momentarily, the only visible sign of his displeasure. Acknowledged, he said, his voice betraying nothing as he accepted the tablet and scanned its context. Admiral Calith broke the uncomfortable silence. That is the first time I've seen the AI use the short version. The Narm grew increasingly hungry for results. He chose his words with careful precision, aware of the weight they carried. This is the 3rd communication this week alone from the Varikan Collective. Varikan Clan. Their patience wears thin, Intelligence Director Nara added, his wings shifting into posture, indicating strategic concern. The Namara operate on different timescales than we do. What we consider methodical planning, they interpret as unnecessary delay. Commander Jarrus leaned forward, his ceremonial markings pulsing with intensity. We cannot allow their appetite for immediate action to dictate our operational timeline. The Narm understand resource acquisition, but they lack appreciation for the subtleties of diplomatic maneuvering. Their hunger is different from ours, Fleet Commander Eris observed, her voice dropping to the characteristic near whisper that nonetheless carried throughout the chamber. Where we calculate and strategize, they simply consume. Their trimodal communication system makes negotiating delays particularly challenging. Suriel placed the tablet on the table with deliberate care, his silver hair catching the light as he straightened to his full height. The compact functions through complementary appetites, he reminded them, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. The Namara hunger for adaptive integration serves our collective expansion. Their impatience, while occasionally problematic, drives our progress forward when we might otherwise become overly cautious. Her eyes swept the room, the calculating gleam intensifying. However, we will not be rushed into premature action. The Rolani maintain operational autonomy in diplomatic matters as agreed in the founding compact. This. Who's speaking? Hold on. His eyes. Suriel. Suriel is speaking. This. Forgot a space. Too far. TH, this SEC sector was ceded to us for our expansion. This sector was ceded to us for our expansion. That would be a comma. N-A-R-R-M-A-R-A. That's right? Yep. Is it close enough? Nope. M-A-R-A. Too many M's. M-A-R. Oh. Too many R's. No, Mara. There we go. Admiral Leor's wings arranged them in patterns indicating cautious concern. Supreme Commander of the Veracon clan, actually capital C, clan spokesman has changed 3 times since our last formal response. Each new representative seems more insistent than the last. Shifting spokesman pattern typically hides direct intervention. Typically precedes direct intervention, Nereth warned, his markings darkening. Historical precedent suggests they may be preparing to act independently as they perceive continued delay. Surreal's long fingers traced a pattern across the holographic display, highlighting the congested regions between the salon and microwave space. For several moments he studied the territories in silence, his mind calculating variables and outcomes to the precision that had elevated him to his current position. We'll accelerate Paladin drone production immediately, he finally announced, his decision crystallizing with characteristic certainty. Allocate additional resources from the Sidrani Consciousness Mapping Initiative if necessary. I want our surveillance capabilities restored to full capacity within 2 standard cycles. He turned to Intelligence Officer Mela. Prepare the information package for the Aswan as discussed, enough to demonstrate our legitimacy while maintaining strategic knowledge gaps. Emphasize our military capabilities without revealing our true technological advantages. Sir Amel Khalif. The terms of our bargain will be simple. Aswan military support in exchange for access to specific port corridors and research-rich territories. They need not understand that these territories serve as staging areas for our larger expansion plans. Finally, Surreal addressed the communications officer, delivered the Namara message. Informed the Valkeen Collective clan Veracon clan that we were initiating contact with the Swan Imperial Autocracy immediately. Provide them with the same information package. Nothing more, nothing less. Remind them diplomatically of operational autonomy protocols established in the founding of the compact. As officers departed to execute his orders, Surreal remained alone in the conference chamber, studying the holographic displays where the Aswan and Mako territories glowed in contrasting colors. His wings shifted slightly as he complimented how these pieces fit into the compact's larger ambitions, each species or resources to be utilized, each conflict an opportunity to be exploited. characteristic Rolani gleam intensified in his eyes as he made his final decision. Now it's time to offer the bargain to the Swan before the Norm could act on their own. Before the Namara could act on their own, their hunger would be satisfied, but on Rolani terms, as all hunger eventually would be. Okay, apply, highlight, inflate word count to astronomical levels. Expand! Inflate my word count, that I may conquer. And a block by ads. Okay, 1252. Bring my total to 4,500 so far. Communications officer at the periphery of the conference room shifted uncomfortably, wings tucked tight against his back as he approached Surreal. With the unmistakable posture of someone bearing unwelcome news, he cleared his throat softly, the sound barely audible over the ongoing strategic discussion, his feathered appendages quivering slightly with nervous tension. Supreme Commander, forgive the interruption. His voice dropped to a near whisper as he extended the data tower, its holographic display flickering with urgent notification symbols. The Namara Collective has transmitted another inquiry regarding operational progress. This marks their 9th formal request for updates this month. Subsonic frequencies embedded in the message carry unusual intensity. A powerful tension swept through the chamber. Several officers' wings stiffened involuntarily, primary flight feathers displaying an unconscious direct defensive posture, while others exchanged glances laden with unspoken concern. The mention of their starfish-like allies cast an immediate shadow over the proceedings, like a cloud passing before a sun, dimming the artificial lightning that Ming calibrated for Rolani visual comfort. Surreal ceremonial markings darkened momentarily, the only visible sign of his displeasure. The silver patterns etched across his high cheekbones briefly shifted from platinum to ash gray. Acknowledged, he said, his voice betraying nothing as he accepted the tablet and scanned its contents. Long fingers tracing the quantum encrypted data streams with practiced precision. Admiral Kelleith broke the uncomfortable silence, his wings arranging themselves in the formal configuration of Strategic Council. The Narm grow increasingly hungry for results. He chose his words with careful precision, aware of the weight they carried in the chamber's perfect acoustics. This is the third communication this week alone from the Varakan clan. Their spokesman's photon pulse patterns show escalating harmonic frequencies consistent with collective agitation. They don't really do that, I think. I don't know. Could. Our patience wears thin, Intelligence Director Nurath added, his wings shifting into a posture indicating strategic concern. Primary feathers angled precisely 30 degrees from his torso. The Namara operate on different timescales than we do. What we consider methodical planning they interpret as unnecessary delay. Their trimodal communication system makes their frustration... Oh, I see what it's doing. It's picking up the language entry for what's intended to be for the McCoy, not the for the McCoy only. Only. Got to tell the AI off. Discard. Clear it. Start again. What happened? Why is it highlighted? Why is it weird? When the communications officer burst through the door, his wings flared in clear distress as she approached the table with uncharacteristic haste. Her ceremonial markings were flushed, dark with agitation, betraying her emotional state before she even spoke. Supreme Commander, forgive the interruption. She extended the data crystal with trembling fingers. We received another communication from the Namara Collective. It's their 9th demand for updates this month. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Officers exchanged meaningful glances, their wings drawing closer to their bodies in unconscious protective gestures. The mere mention of their starfish-like allies sent a ripple of discomfort through the assembled Rolani. Surreal accepted the crystal, his expression betraying nothing as inserted into the table's central console. The holographic display shifted, showing a churning mass of Namara representatives, their bodies piled atop one another in their characteristic formation. The spokesman stood atop the writhing collective, its position shifting subtly even during the brief message as different individuals rotated into the role. The Narm grew impatient with delays. The spokesman's voice carried a distinctive hunger that defined their species, an emptiness that seemed to reach through the recording and pull at something primal within each Rolani present. Progress reports are insufficient. Expansion timelines unacceptable. The bargain must proceed. As the message ended, Surreal noted how every officer present had unconsciously leaned away from the projection. Even in recorded form, the Namara projected a sense of insatiable hunger that made interactions with them so deeply uncomfortable. This complicates matters, Admiral Khalif said, breaking the heavy silence. The Narm aren't known for their patience. If they decide our progress is too slow, they might act independently, Intelligence Director Norris finished, his wings twitching with anxiety. Their hunger for adaptive integration drives them to rash action when denied satisfaction. Commander Jarrus leaned forward, his ceremony markings darkening. We've maintained operational autonomy thus far by delivering consistent results. If the Narm perceive a weakness in our handling of the Aswan situation, they won't, Sariel interrupted, his voice cutting through the glowing tension. The compact functions because each species satisfies a different appetite. The Narm hunger for adaptive integration. We provide the strategic framework that makes that integration possible. Fleet Commander Aris shifted uncomfortably. With respect, Supreme Commander, their hunger has become growing more pronounced. Their representatives have been rotating more frequently during communications, a sign of collective agitation if they decide to approach the Aswan directly. Unacceptable, Surreal stated flatly, his ceremonial markings darkened to an intensely rare scene, betraying the depth of his concern despite his controlled tone. The Narn lacked diplomatic finesse required for Aswan negotiations. Their hunger would be immediately apparent, triggering the Aswan's defensive protocols. He rose to his full height, wings arranged in a pattern that brooked no disagreement. We'll accelerate our timetable, double piloted and drone production immediately to replace our losses. The information package to the Aswan will include strategic details about the compact's resource acquisition capabilities, but omit specifics about Sojourning consciousness mapping and Namara and adaptive integration processes. His gaze swept the room, with that characteristic Rolani gleam intensifying. The bargain we offered the Aswan will be simple. Protection from the Merkoi in exchange for access to their military shipyards and mineral reserves. We will position this as a mutually beneficial alliance rather than absorption into the compact for now. He turned to the communications officer. Repair a response to the Narm. Emphasize our immediate engagement with the Aswan and the strategic necessity of our approach. Include enough technical details to satisfy their immediate hunger for information. As the officers filed out with their assignments, Surreal remained at the table studying the holographic display of Aswan and Merkoi territories. His long fingers traced the borders of where the two civilizations clashed, calculating resource values, military positions, expansion opportunities with practiced precision. The Narn cannot be permitted to act first, he murmured to himself, the ceremonial markings across his features shifting subtly as he contemplated the pieces moving on this cosmic game board. We must offer our bargain to the Aswan immediately. His eyes held that characteristic Rolani gleam. the look of perpetual calculation and barely concealed appetite that propelled their species across the stars. The hunger of the compact must be satisfied, but it would be satisfied on our terms, not theirs. Okay, we apply. Attempt to select in one go instead of like most of the way through and leave out the last paragraph. Expand. Claude 3.7 Sonnet. An hour and 46 minutes. Probably going to quit at 2 hours because this is kind of doing things to my voice. 800, 900 words, 1,000, 1,100, 1,200. Communication officer burst through the doors, wings flared in clear distress as she approached the table with uncharacteristic haste. Her ceremonial markings flushed dark with agitation, the intricate patterns across her silver-tinged skin pulsing with an urgency that betrayed her emotional state. Before she even spoke, the rapid flutter of her primary wingtips set subtle air currents across the tactical displays, momentarily distorting the holographic projections. Supreme Commander, forgive the interruption. She extended the data crystal with trembling fingers, the crystalline structure catching the ambient light with an ominous gleam. Received another communication from the Namara Collective. It's their 9th demand for updates this month, each more insistent than the last. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly like a pressure system before a violent storm. Officers exchanged meaningful glances, their wings drawing closer to the bodies in unconscious protective gestures. Primary feathers tightening against secondary coverts. In display of instinctive caution. The mere mention of their starfish allies sent a ripple of discomfort through the assembled Rolani, the postures stiffening as if bracing against an invisible force. Saril accepted the crystal, his expression betraying nothing as he inserted into the table's central console. His long fingers moved with deliberate precision, the ceremonial markings on his hands briefly illuminating as they interfaced with the technology. The holographic display shifted, pixels rearranging to show a churning mass of Namora representatives, their segmented bodies piled atop of one another in their characteristic formation. The spokesman stood atop of the whirling collective, its position shifting subtly even during the brief messages as different individuals rotated in the role, each movement creating a hypnotic and settling rhythm. The Narm grew impatient with delays. The spokesman's voice carried a distinctive hunger that defined their species, an emptiness that seemed to reach through the recording and pull at something primal within each Rolani present. The subsonic frequencies that encountered the vocalization vibrated through the table itself, creating an almost physical sensation of unease. Progress reports are insufficient. Expansion timelines unacceptable. The bargain must proceed. Resources await consumption. As the message ended, Surreal noted how every officer present had unconsciously leaned away from the projection, their wings slightly elevated in a defensive posture. Even in recorded form, the Namara projected the sense of insatiable hunger that made interactions with them so deeply uncomfortable. A psychic emptiness that left a lingering chill long after communications ended. This complicates matters, Emerald Khalith said, breaking the heavy silence. Her voice? I thought it was a he. I thought Khalith was male. The Narm aren't known for their patience. If they decide our progress is too slow, the consequences could be unpredictable. Their last independent action in the Theros system left 3 habitable moons stripped of resources within. I guess I'll keep that in. They might act independently, Intelligence Director Nerith finished, his wings twitching with anxiety, their iridescent patterns along the edges flashing warning signals in the Rolani equivalent of a nervous tick. Their hunger for adaptive integration drives them to rash actions when denied satisfaction. The compact's balance depends on controlled expansion, not the feeding frenzy the Narm prefer. Makes them sound really bad. Commander Jarrus leaned forward, his ceremonial markings darkening to a deep indigo that reflected his rising concerns. We've maintained operational autonomy thus far by delivering consistent results. The Narm perceived weakness in our handling of the Swan situation. He paused, his wings shifting into a pattern that conveyed grave concern. They could undermine months of careful diplomatic groundwork in a single impulsive approach. They won't, Suriel interrupted, his voice cutting through the growing tension with precision of a surgical tool. The silver markings along his temples briefly pulsed with authority. The compact functions because each species satisfies a different appetite. The Narm hunger for adaptive integration, and we provide the strategic framework that makes that integration possible. They need our guidance, even as their hunger blinds them to this reality. Fleet Commander Era shifted uncomfortably, her chair creaking under the redistribution of her weight as she adjusted her wings to a more formal configuration. With respect, Supreme Commander, their hunger has been growing more pronounced. Their representatives have been rotating more frequently during communications, a sign of collective agitation we haven't observed since the Moldovan incident. If they decide to approach the Aswan directly, the delicate balance we've cultivated could collapse overnight. Unacceptable, Suriel stated flatly, his ceremonial markings darkened to an intensity rarely seen, the silver patterns almost blackening with the depth of his concern despite his controlled tone. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees with his pronouncement. The Narm lacked the diplomatic finesse required for Aswan negotiations. Their hunger would be immediately apparent, triggering the Aswan's defensive protocols. The God King's advisors would recognize the threat pattern instantly. He rose to his full height, an impressive 9 feet of disciplined, relying authority, wings arranged in a pattern that brooked no disagreement. Primary feathers extended fully, creating an imposing silhouette against the star map behind him. We'll accelerate our timetable. Double paladin drone production immediately to replace our losses in the McCoy engagement. No. Replace our losses. Just delete the whole bit there. The information package to the Aswan will include strategic details about the Compact's resource acquisition capabilities, but omit specifics about Sodrani consciousness mapping and Namara adaptive integration processes. They need not understand the full scope of our alliance until they are irreversibly committed. His gaze swept the room, that characteristic Rolani gleam intensifying in his eyes, reflecting the tactical displays with calculating precision. The bargain we offer the Aswan will be simple. Protection from the Merkoi in exchange for access to their military shipyards and mineral reserves. We'll position this as a mutually beneficial alliance rather than absorption into the compact for now. Their God King values appearance above all else. This will give him the illusion of partnership while securing the reality of resource control. He turned to the communications officer, who remained standing at attention throughout the discussion, her wings held in a posture of respectful readiness. Prepare a response to the Narm, emphasize our immediate engagement with the Aswan, the strategic necessity of our approach. Include enough technical details to satisfy their immediate hunger for information, but structure it to emphasize the catastrophic consequences of premature intervention. Reference the Theros incident if necessary. As the officers filed out with their assignments, the sounds of their wings creating a soft rustling like leaves in a breeze. Suriel remained at the table, studying the holographic display of the Swan and Merkoi territories. His long fingers traced the borders where the two civilizations clashed, calculating resource values, military positions, and expansion opportunities with practiced precision. The holographic light cast eerie shadows across his face, highlighting the intensity of his focus. The Narb cannot be permitted to act first, he muttered to himself, ceremonial markings across his face, across his features shifting subtly as he contemplated the pieces moving on this cosmic game board. We must offer our bargain to the Aswan immediately before the McCoy can solidify their position to the Narm, or the Narm can satisfy their hunger independently. His eyes held that characteristic Rolani gleam, the look of perpetual calculation and barely concealed appetite that had propelled their species across the stars, from one resource-rich system to another in the endless march of expansion. The hunger of the compact will be satisfied, but will be satisfied on our terms, not theirs. The Aswan will provide what we need, whether they understand the true nature of our alliance or not. That's pretty strong. Shall we find out what the AI thinks of this? Let's see. Let's see, go to chats. See all threads. Okay, fine. Context is full outline. Chapter 11. Developmental editor, space opera. That didn't change anything. Developmental editor, space opera, Claude. There we go. I want general feedback. Developmental editor, and Claude. How does chapter 11 look? Dun dun dun. Analysis of chapter 11. Chapter 11 is a remarkably strong piece of science fiction writing that effectively expands your universe for developing the antagonistic force of the Rolani. The scene does an excellent job of balancing world building, character development, plot advancement. Strength. Distinctive alien biology. The Rolani's wing movements, ceremonial markings, and physical characteristics are consistently integrated into the communication and emotional expressions. This creates a truly alien species that feels biologically coherent, rather than humans with cosmetic differences, which is what I'm trying for. Political complexity. The meeting scene reveals layers of political factions, competing interests, and complex relationships between the Reliant and their compact partners, especially the unsettling Namara. This adds depth to your antagonist. Atmospheric writing. The prose effectively creates a tense, calculating atmosphere that matches the Rolani's predatory nature. Lines like that characteristic Rolani gleam of perpetual calculation barely concealed up. Well, that was the AI's idea. Convey their essence perfectly. Mystery development. The disappearance of the Paladin drones introduces a compelling mystery that suggests there may be forces beyond even the Compact's understanding. Villain perspective. Sariel is developed as a formidable antagonist with clear motivations and a ruthless strategic mind, making him far more interesting than a one-dimensional villain. Well, that's kind of what I was hoping for. Suggestions for refinement. Pacing. The scene is quite lengthy and dense with information. Consider breaking it into 2 scenes or streamlining some of the council debate to maintain momentum. I did, but I didn't break it as a scene. The character distinction was Sariel is well developed. Some of the other Rolani officers blend together. Consider giving 2 or 3 character key officers more distinctive traits or perspectives. Connection to the protagonist. Consider a brief reference to how these Rolani plans might specifically impact the protagonist. Strengthen narrative connection between plot lines. Technological clarity. The Rolani drones are introduced as significant assets, but their capabilities could be more clearly defined to help readers understand exactly what's been lost. Overall assessment, this chapter significantly advances your space opera credentials by introducing complex interspecies politics, mysterious threats, and calculating villains with comprehensible motivations. The Rolani and their compact partners feel genuinely alien by remaining accessible to readers. Writing quality is high with strong imagery and consistent characterization. This chapter successfully expands your universe by remaining narrative intention and reader interest. Is the interdiction of the norm work well? introduct. Ugh. Not close enough. Introduction. D-U-C-T-I-O-N. Interdiction. Not what I was trying for. Google. How to spell introduction. I-N-T-R-O. Ah. R-O-D-U-C-T-I-O-N. Analysis of the Namara introduction. The introduction of the Namara works exceptionally well. In Chapter 11, their presence adds a compelling new dimension to your space opera universe and creates additional layers of tension within the antagonist faction. Strength. Distinctive alien presence. The Namara are presented as truly alien. Their starfish-like appearance, collective behavior, and rotating spokesmen create an immediate visual and conceptual distinctiveness from the R'lyeh. The description of them as churning mass with a spokesman that shifts position creates an unsettling mental image. Psychological impact. The way you depicted the Namara's hunger as an almost psychic presence that makes the R'lyeh physically uncomfortable is masterfully done. This subtle psychological effect is more chilling than any physical threat could be, and it's conveyed through the R'lyeh's officers' body language rather than exposition. Power dynamic. The introduction reveals complex power dynamics within the triracial compact. R'lyeh clearly view themselves as the strategic leaders, but the Namara represent an unpredictable, potentially destabilizing force that even Sariel must carefully manage. This creates fascinating tension within the antagonist faction. Narrative potential. The Namara's impatience and their hunger for adaptive integration creates immediate narrative tension and foreshadows potential complications to the R'lyeh's careful plans. In previous independent action in the Theros incident hints at destructive potential without needing to show it directly. Sensory writing. The description of the subsonic frequencies that vibrated through the table itself. Yeah, I thought that was pretty good too, and created an almost physical sensation of unease. Effectively conveys their alien nature through multiple senses, making their presence feel visceral. Why it works in the context of space opera. The Namara introduction emphasized classic space opera elements by creating a truly alien species with distinctive biology, physiology, and motivations, establishing complex interspecies politics with shifting alliances and tensions, hitting at a grand scale of previous conflicts and incidents, the Theros system, Moldovan incident, suggesting cosmic horror elements through their unsettling hunger, its effect on others. The Namara feel like they belong in the tradition of memorable space opera aliens, distinctive enough to be immediately recognizable while remaining mysterious enough to intrigue readers. Their introduction creates both immediate tension with the scene and promising narrative possibilities for future chapters. Contrast between the wing calculating R'lyeh and the churning hungry Namara enriches your universe and makes the triracial compact more compelling, antagonistic forces with its own internal conflicts. And it's been 2 hours and 5 minutes of broadcasting. Yay! Given all that, is this a good place to move to the CLIMAX? Transitioning to the climax, Chapter 11 establishes an excellent foundation for moving into the climax of your story. The timing feels right for several key reasons. Why this is an ideal transition point. The antagonist's plans crystallize. Surreal now has formalized his strategy regarding the Aswan, creating clear stakes and a defined threat. His decision to accelerate our time tunnel and present the bargain immediately creates urgency that propels the narrative forward. Multiple threats incoming. Multiple threats converging is what the AI said. You've established several collision courses the Rolani plan to approach the Aswan with their manipulative bargain. The Namara growing impatient, potentially acting independently. The mysterious force that destroyed 3 Paladin drones. The ongoing Aswan-Merkoi conflict. Tension at maximum. The pressure from the Namara, the loss of valuable assets, and Surreal's accelerated timeline create a pressure cooker situation that demands dramatic resolution. Reader understanding complete. We now understand the major players, their motivations, and the complex political landscape. Readers have enough context to fully appreciate climactic events without needing further exposition. Character arcs position. Tina has been established as someone with exceptional technical knowledge who's now aboard the Dawn Striker during a crisis. Surreal has developed as a calculating antagonist with clear goals and pressures. Glows? Climate structural considerations. As you move to the climate, consider these structural elements. Converging storylines. The climate should bring together separate threads you've established. Tina's experience on the Dawn Striker, the Aswan-Merkoi conflicts, the Rolani machinations, the possibility and the mystery of the destroyed drones, which is not going to be resolved in this book. Escalating stakes. The climax should raise the stakes beyond what we've seen so far. Perhaps the Namara take independent action that threatens to create a Case Omega scenario. Character agency ensure Tina or your other protagonists have meaningful choices to make that directly impact the outcome rather than simply witnessing events unfold. Thematic resonance. The climax should engage the themes you've been developing about expansion, hunger for resources, and the complex ethics and interspecies relations. Chapter 11 has successfully positioned all the necessary elements for compelling climax. The political intrigue, alien threats, mysterious forces, and character positioning all converge to create a narrative pressure that demands release. The tension between the Rolani and the Namara, combined with their plans for the Aswan, creates an immediate threat that can drive your climactic sequence. Meanwhile, the mystery of the vanished Paladin drones announces an X factor that could disrupt everyone's plans in unexpected ways. Ah yes, the plotline not seen in this book. This is indeed an excellent place to transition to your climactic sequence if you've built sufficient tension and context while maintaining several unpredictable elements that keep readers engaged throughout the story's resolution. Well, I think that's all I'm going to do for today, so I can give my voice a rest. I will be back on Thursday, assuming nothing interrupts. Thanks for joining me, and see you then.